I'm Tim Seelig, artist, activist, and entrepreneur.
Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. On this week's episode, we are welcoming Dr. Tim Seelig, who is joining us all the way from San Francisco, California. Welcome, Tim. It's so nice to have you on our show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
For folks that are not familiar with Dr. Seelig, he is an author, conductor, singer, teacher, and motivational speaker. He is the Artistic Director and Conductor of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus and the National LGBTQ Center for the Arts. Dr. Seelig is a true Renaissance man, holding 4 degrees, authoring numerous best-selling books, and singing opera at places like Carnegie Hall and conducting music at the Lincoln Center over the past 25 years. He holds a Guinness Book of World Records for the longest choral concert, and he even carried the Olympic torch in 1996 as a community hero. Today, we'll discuss Dr. Seelig's latest book, Tale of Two Tims, Big Old Baptist, Big Old Gay, to discuss what happens when you stop hiding and you start being your real self. So, Tim, again, welcome to the show. It's really a pleasure to host you. You know, I wanted to start by kind of examining your journey and specifically your life journey that led to writing your latest book, Tale of Two Tims. So if you could, just let us know, why did you choose to write this book now? And what's the book's goal?
Oh boy, wow. So you're giving me the choice whether I start at birth and move forward or at the near death and move backwards. That's a big responsibility. So the book, The Tale of Two Tims, I have a life divided almost exactly in half. For 35 years, I pretended to be straight. I say I was straight, but that I wasn't really good at it, except I did have a wife and children and was a Southern Baptist minister of music and did all those things. And then I came out at 35, and I'll tell you more about that later. Being the minister of a church of 22,000 people, people ask me, how'd that go for you? How was that for you, that coming out? And I was like, well, you can just imagine. Yeah. Use your worst imagination in 1986, what that was like. And the last 34, almost 35 years, I've spent conducting LGBTQ choruses around the world. So it's quite a dramatic shift in at the age of 35. I began my life with both parents being Southern Baptist professionals, preacher and voice teacher, singer. My mom sang with Billy Graham, and we were raised, my brother and I, to be good Baptist little boys and do the right thing and go to Baptist universities and marry Baptist girls and have Baptist children and wear Baptist clothes, all the good stuff. And we did it. And both my brother and I were sort of like superstars because we were also not, along with being a Baptist, was instilled a work ethic. And so we did, and we rose to, both of us were in huge churches when I came out. And after that, I found out that there was such a thing as a gay chorus. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I thought there might be some people in the First Baptist choir that were gay, but I wasn't sure. So this was my first experience, and that was in 1987. So I applied for a job with the Gay Men's Chorus in Dallas, Texas. And as I say, they were broke, dysfunctional, codependent. We were the perfect match for each other. Just perfect going down that path. We can talk more about the business side of it, but it really exploded fairly quickly. And the job I thought I was going to keep for a year just to pay child support, I ended up staying there 20 years. And that was really incredible. The business side, the artistic side, both just grew really hand in hand. And then 10 years ago, the job came open at the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, which is the first LGBTQ chorus in the world. I love to tell that story. So if we get back around, it's an amazing story how that happened in 1978. But I got to come here to the mothership in 2011, and I will have been here 10 years
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's great.
So for the book, right? So you walked us through a little bit of your life. You've got The Tale of Two Tims coming out. So, you've lived, like you said, half of your life in the closet, half of your life, now out. I totally get that. I'm a little over 40 now. As a trans person, I've lived half my life before transitioning, half after. And so I kind of get that perspective in what you're sharing. But why now? I mean, you've written a number of different books. Like, why go into your own story, and why share it with the world at this moment in time?
So that gets right into it. I've had many ups and downs and been thrown on the ground many times throughout my life, both in my operatic career of successes and failures. And then coming out was certainly a huge one. Then after having been an AIDS activist for many years, I seroconverted myself and found myself being HIV positive, which was an entirely different coming out to family and people, especially considering I was already at the forefront. And so I was always able to get up and keep going. Nothing ever debilitated me until just a little over 2 years ago. My daughter died. One of two children. I had a boy and a girl, and rough years after coming out. They were 7 and 9. She was 9, and she stayed by my side for all the years, for the next 30 years, best friends. And she died 2 years ago, and I thought, this is the one. It can't get any worse than this. And it threw me into for the first time in my life, a real time frame when I didn't know which end was up. And, I have a lot of colloquialisms, by the way, because I was in Texas for 60 years. My mama, I have a lot of mama stories. One day my mama went to the beauty parlor. This is a true story. And she said to the shampoo girl, "Hello." And the shampoo girl said, "Hi, Miss Seelig, how are you doing?" And my mom said, "Oh my goodness, I don't even know which end is up." To which the shampoo girl said, "Well, you better decide, because I'm going to wash one of them." So, yes. Thank you very much. But
I know.
I love it.
Sound effects.
I knew that was going to come back on you later when you say, "I don't know which end is up." For the first time, I really just was sort of drifting and had some short-term memory loss due to this trauma. It didn't help that she died in October and my father died in February. So it just compounded that. And I decided that to get myself together, I would take a sabbatical. And I decided, because I've written books, and I write an article. I actually write a monthly article for the gay paper here in San Francisco at the Bay Times. And I just thought, well, this is great. I write, and sometimes people read it. I think I'll just write. And I took 3 months off with the goal of simply journaling and going back and figuring out how I got to this point in my life. And at the end of that, I was telling people I was writing, and somebody, my editor at the paper, actually said, "I want to see your writing." And she said, "This is a book. So now get your act together and finish it up." And it really is just about my life and the things that happened, and interesting and funny and some tragic. So the final impetus in doing that was absolutely my daughter's death. And to say anything else would be just wrong. So that was it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, one, just for your generosity and sharing a little bit about your losses, and my condolences. And also, what a way to kind of channel, grief and, the reflection and the mourning that you need to do, and just putting your heart and soul into your writing. And the support of your editor, just to be like, "Hey, Tim, that's a book. Go ahead and do it." It's nice to have that kind of support for people to see that potential. And, I think the book, is healing for you for sure. And I think for many people who have the opportunity to read it, there's so many points of connection in what you're sharing. And, I want to go to something that is in a little bit of your extended bio, which is, kind of talking about the early days of HIV AIDS. We're talking like little bit late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You were outed by your family and church of, like you said, 22,000 members. That's a lot of community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, you shared, you had lost everything that you had built. And, I mention that because some business owners who, tune into this show are still negotiating how out they can be in their own businesses or if they can be out at all. So what advice might you share with those folks, given your own personal coming out story?
Thank you. I love that question so much. For years with the wife and 2 children and the perfect home and car, I did those exact same things, those weighing out what ifs. And in my case, I truly had come to a point that I couldn't do this anymore and thought the world would be better off without me. I'm not a suicidal kind of person, but I certainly had those thoughts, as many LGBTQ people in the closet do. For me, counting those costs, I finally decided that to give up everything in trade for being authentic was worth it. And I've spent the last 34 years now, almost 35, having a lot of fun, let's just say that, and making more of an impact in the world because of the authenticity. There are wonderful writers all over who say everybody is unique and everybody is talented, but not everybody is authentic. And we certainly find that out. As a business owner, I think the same holds true. I think the key is authenticity. And if you're in a business where you're come in contact with people on a daily basis, whether that be your employees or your customers, it's authentic. And I have several things to say about this. Thank you for bringing this up. Don't borrow trouble from the future. Don't borrow trouble from the future. What you're doing is living in fear that someone will find out is the worst thing in the world. I wrote about 3 weeks ago, I wrote an op-ed about Jerry Falwell Jr. And the op-ed was, I can empathize with him. And people are like, what? And I said, oh, yeah, because, every day after the 3-way with the pool boy, he lived in fear of who would find out. And the lies get bigger. And the cover-ups get worse. And so that trade-off for me eventually was not worth it. Some people, when they come out, all of that does come true. All the trouble. Not most. For most, and I have worked with hundreds of LGBTQ people over the last 34 years, literally hundreds. I have 300 men in my chorus at this moment. It's interesting that not one ever said to me, I wish I had waited one more day to come out. Not one. Not one said, oh, I wish I'd waited 3 months to come out. Every single one of them is like, oh, geez, I wish I had done this sooner. What was I thinking? What did I think would happen? Some people are like, well, I can't come out because Grandpa will die. He'll die from this. There are no known cases of anyone dying from a relative coming out. So you can put that one aside. Grandpa's not going to die. He may be your best friend. That's some of the hidden surprises are the people that do rally around you that you never thought would. And then the surprises of all those that go running for the hills and probably knew you were gay anyway, but now that you're out are not interested. I go back to, I can't judge anyone for their coming out journey. But I will say this, and you'll understand this, especially my mom and dad and my son, when I came out and became the Dallas Gay Men's Chorus, started just exploding, and I was getting interviews on papers like, what the hell, in Dallas and other places. And my mom and dad kept saying to me, why do you have to tell this story? Why don't you just wave your arms and make pretty music? And why do you have to tell the gay thing? And I said to my mom and dad, and I think many of your listeners will relate to this, even if they didn't grow up in the South or in a religious background. I said to mom and dad, so what's the most important day of your life, of your whole life? What's the most important day? And you think, of course, I was thinking they were going to say when I was born, but they did not. Or the day they got married. Nope, not the day they got married. This, they said, the most important day of our lives was the day we accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior and personal Lord. That because from that day forward, everything was different. From that day, everything changed. I said to mom and dad, exactly. So I'm going to keep talking about my coming out experience, because from that day forward, everything was different. Everything changed from that day. So we have more in common than you thought. They were not pleased with the analogy at all, but it's the truth. And, you being a trans sibling of mine, same thing. From that day that you came out about this, everything's changed. And so I would say that to your business folks, that, now's a really good time to come out, because there's not much to lose anyway. So
yeah.
With our economy in a mess, I have experienced with friends who are business owners this very same thing of when they stood up and said, "This is me." Their customers didn't leave. In fact, for the most part, increased. And there's no guarantee of that happening, but I've certainly witnessed it myself.
Yeah, that power of authenticity comes up again and again on the show, and there's different ways folks describe it. And I really love what you're saying about, don't borrow trouble from the future. And some of the guidance, the advice that you offer here is generalizable, right? I mean, I think most folks can tune in and can, resonate with some of the advice that you're offering. I wanted to hone in, a little more specifically, and for present day Tim, your book is about the tale of two Tims. If you could go back to the future and to talk to your younger self, your 34-year-old Tim, before that defining moment that you talk about coming out, what advice would you share with younger Tim to prepare him for the journey ahead as being both an LGBTQ and HIV/AIDS activist?
It's hard to know what you would say to your 34-year-old Tim. I wish I knew, but knowing what I know now, certainly I would sit Tim down and I would try to get him to drink an alcoholic beverage, although at 34 he wasn't drinking. And I would tell him, first of all, that this is going to be a really good thing for you in the next 35 years, but he probably wouldn't even drink maybe a pina colada or maybe a virgin pina colada. And I would sit him down and I would say, the short term is going to be shit. It is beyond, talk about borrowing trouble. You're going to have it all. And it's going to be really rough. But I would tell 34-year-old Tim, you got it. You got this. You got this in you. You've been training for this kind of risk, which I absolutely want to talk about risk before we're done. You've been trained for this, and you know that you're a good guy. Just don't forget that when all of this happens, and you will get over it. And I would be able to say to 34-year-old that, give it 3 years. Don't despair for 3 years. And of course, I would say to 34-year-old, you could have done this more gracefully, but then it was done to me, I didn't have the choice of how the Band-Aid was ripped off in one fell swoop. But really I think if I went back and talked to each of the decades, let's say, I certainly would have said something different. Let's go with 14. I would have said, girl, you gay. You're going to be gay. And then, my whole path would have been I have no idea what it would have been. Chances are I wouldn't be alive because, I was living through the 80s. And the 24-year-old, I'd been married for 2 years, and I have no idea. I would say, oh, I'm so sorry that you took this path, but maybe you should get out of it quicker than you are going to. So I think each decade holds a different message, but pretty much all the same one, and that is tell the truth. When I was outed and came out, sitting down with mom and dad the first time, they asked the normal question of, what did we do to make you gay? And I was I was patient and I knew it was coming. And I said, there is nothing you did to make me gay. But what you did was make me honest. What you did was build into me this thing that said, you cannot live a lie. And you gave me the courage to tell the truth. Again, not their favorite answer. But I did want to
compliment, though. A nice compliment on parenting.
Yeah, well, it's true. Oh boy, is it true! My father is a truth teller, or was a truth teller, and so I had that as a role model. And he told the truth in his life and in business, and just counted the cost, and then told the truth. It was great. I love talking about the high dive, the diving board, and that experience. Many of you, well, no, all of you will remember going to the swimming pool and looking up at the high dive and thinking, no way. And then you would go back, and then you would go back, and you'd jump off the short dive. And then either your friends or your cousins started calling you names at the pool, like chicken, but maybe even worse. And so you climbed up, and it seemed like 4 stories tall, and then maybe you climb back down, and then you climbed all the way up, and then there are people behind you, and you have no choice. So you walk out slowly, and there are whole crowds of people watching by this point, having been through that experience themselves. And they get to the end, and you kneel down close as you can to the water 10 feet below, and finally you take the courage to jump and splash, and you come up out of the water, and the first thing you say is, I want to do that again.
Yep.
I want to do that again.
Yeah.
I'm prepared for maybe the 12-foot high dive. For me, all of the risks I've taken a lot of risks, both artistically and financially, with both of my choruses. Actually, I've had 3 choruses, and I've led them to understand that this is a financial risk. But guess what? We did that before. We've done that before, and it turned out okay. There are no guarantees, but the high dive felt good. And lo and behold, you got back in line and said, let's have some more of that.
I love that analogy. This is the second time the high dive analogy has come up for me today.
Are you serious? Okay,
yeah, and I love it. It's and earlier today we were talking about the high dive and desire versus risk, right?
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
if one outweighs the other, it influences the decision that you make. You either jump off of it or you don't. I guess you could just sit there and meditate. I don't know. There's always probably another way, but
I do that analogy a little bit more drawn out and a lot of fun at speeches, and I usually say, like I did Grandpa, I usually say no one's ever died from jumping off a high dive, to which, of course, every once in a while somebody raises their hand and goes, I knew somebody once that died. And I'm like, it's not real.
Yeah, exactly. Most people, the majority of people.
Oh, yeah. Most people don't die from a high dive.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went back to risk, because I was curious about where you're going to go with that. I want to kind of pivot just a bit and going into just examining the business of book writing. And you've been through this before. You're an author of a number of bestsellers. So can you talk with us about how you approached the process, and maybe how this particular process was maybe a little bit different?
Oh, a little. Yes, he said.
Yes. And then how do you use your books to build your speaking brand, and how does it fuel your other creative projects? Because you're a sound artist. I'm sure maybe you're a visual artist. It just seems like you're constantly creating. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Okay, I would love to. 15 years ago, I was already finding success as a conductor, and a publisher at dinner said, you should write a book about how you create this sound with your chorus in Dallas at that time. And I'm like, I'm not old enough to write a book. And he held up a mirror, not a real mirror, and said, hey, look, you're old enough, start writing. So I wrote my first book, and it was published by Hal Leonard Corporation, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, music publishers in the world. So that was awesome. I mean, I wrote a book, they published it, and it had its 5th printing and is now in its 2nd edition and is online. I have nothing to do with it. So then they came back and said, oh, you should write another one. And this was about rehearsing. How do you rehearse? And it's really got some really great life lessons. And one of those life lessons is it's about the trip, not the destination. It's about the process, not the product. And the proof of the pudding is in how you get there, not in just what you got once you got there. And I think this is for everyone, that, business owners, entrepreneurs, if you're not enjoying the process, the payoff is not going to count. You're going to be miserable. It doesn't matter what you do. But if you enjoy the process and are creating and causing synergy among your employees and creating joy in this process, the product is going to be the cherry on top of the sundae. So that was book number 2. And then they were like, okay, you have these huge organizations, multi-million-dollar budgets. How does the business of chorus work? And so I wrote an entire workbook on how to create this kind of thing, both the financial security as well as the inner workings of a chorus. And so it just kept going, all with the same publisher. Awesome. I don't have to I'm not the fulfillment center until I wrote this one. And oh boy, I am the fulfillment center. And it's not my most creative or happy task. I do have a publisher. This day and age is very different in the publishing world. So when the book started to take form, I had 2 choices. I could self-publish, which many people are doing to huge success. But then I was directed to a publisher, and it's quite fascinating. I'm not sure if there's time for it, but a small publisher and a Christian publisher, interestingly enough, but uber liberal, like way over there on the liberal side. And they read it, and they were like, this is cool, a different kind of book than we have, but I think Christians need to read what happens when you treat people shitty. So I thought this is the perfect thing. And so I said, yes, you can publish my book. And then I realized it's a very small publishing company. They have no advertising budget. They basically house some books, and the audiobook, which, by the way, I read myself. Yes. So if you like my voice, buy the audiobook. If you don't, then just don't do any of it. So they do some sales, but not very many. I don't think that the Southern Baptists are knocking their door down to read this book. But the deal with the smaller publisher is that I can sell books on my own, which leads us at the end to timseelig.com, which is where I think a lot of people are buying books straight from my website. It is on Amazon. It's on all that stuff. The audiobook is available everywhere. But a lot of people are buying from timseelig.com. And therein lies the fulfillment center. And if you could see this podcast, I'm shaking my head. Don't ever do it. Don't do it. I knew all along that I didn't want to sell my own books, the music books. I knew that. But I had a publisher. I didn't even have to ponder it for very long. And right now in my inbox from Squarespace are about 7 book orders. And it's too much. Yeah. I mean, that's in the last couple of days. And, I get the puffy folder and I print the label and I take it. Oh, geez. So if you have a choice of buying it at Amazon, go do that. So I don't have to pack your thing. But on my website, you can have it autographed. You can actually say, hey, would you say, Bill, you're a great guy, even if I've never known you. You can say whatever you want to. I do have a friend who's trying very hard to get a book published with a major publisher. And the day of printing books, even Amazon, in the first week they released my book, ran out because they're just not ordering enough books. They're not going to take that risk. So most of it's print on demand. Amazon is print on demand, which is insane. You're like, really, Amazon? So the book writing is very different. I think going back, I might self-publish. I might, because I am anyway, basically self-published.
It's like more of that kind of hybrid publishing where you've got like a publisher that's kind of doing some of it, but you also you have your fulfillment center, which is kind of a blessing and a curse.
It's so bad.
Yeah. I mean, there's options, right? And I think like that's really powerful. The book, like you're doing this book, you're doing it a little bit different than the other books that you've had a lot of success doing that kind of traditional publishing route, which seems to be, I don't even know what that looks like now because it's so many people are doing the self-publishing thing or the hybrid.
Yeah.
How does this book, and I know that you've been speaking for most of your career, right? So how does this book change what you're talking about when you're being asked to do talks, and how is it helping you, with your brand and kind of the brand that you've built over the past 25 years plus, right?
I think the biggest benefit is I'm on your podcast. Hello.
Hello.
People.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be on your podcast until I wrote this book. The last, I guess, 25 years, I've had such an amazing opportunity to speak, but mostly via LGBTQ choral world or the straight choral world, because my books, the music books, are obviously just going to straight people and a few gay teachers in between, but it's a widely distributed music publisher, has nothing to do with sexual orientation, or as our soon to be Supreme Court nominee says, sexual preference, but we just won't even jump into that.
We'll just say that's
Couldn't help it.
Yeah.
Couldn't help it.
Yeah.
So writing the book has certainly opened up new doors, for which I'm incredibly grateful. So many podcasts, and I was really busy the 2 weeks before National Coming Out Day, which is amazing. I got to say many of the things I said to you all earlier about coming out. So now I'm gearing up now for World AIDS Day coming up in December. So November, I'll be speaking a lot about that. And it's interesting because people see me for one thing. They go, oh, he's a conductor and geez, the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. And I do want to tell that story. So
we got time.
Okay. So yeah, they saw this person, but then when they started reading the book or the summary of the book, it opened up everyone's eyes. It was really great. You know, we look at people in a very one-dimensional, you know, he waves his arms at gays. Mm-hmm. And that's who he is. And then all of a sudden, you know, I became very vulnerable and talked about my biggest failure is that I can't keep a boyfriend. Dang it. Look me up, folks. And
just have contact information at the end.
I just haven't done great. I've been with some really great guys, but it just hasn't lasted. But those things are in the book, and even more personal things, since all of your listeners are LGBTQ. I tried a throuple for quite some time, and it was amazing. I think polyamory is amazing. I also think there are like 3 people on the planet who can pull it off. It's hard, but I put that in there because I wanted the Southern Baptists to read. I wanted them to read it. I wanted to push them. You know, like, oh my gosh, Martha, did you read this part?
Yeah. Well, it may push some people in our own communities, right? You know, so it's just kind of that honesty, right? Yeah.
Yes, it sure does. Yes, we carry into this life so much baggage from the old one. Oh boy, maybe I would have told 34-year-old girl, leave your baggage. Leave more of your baggage, because being a supposed womb to tomb Southern Baptist, it's why I've been in therapy for almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I mean, a lot of from childhood, you know, the things that we've learned, you know, some of which, maybe a lot of it, you know, we have to de-educate to re-educate, and really to know who we are and to become fully self-actualized. And, you know, like whether it's a throuple or whether it's figuring out how to be trans in the world, there's not a lot of possibility models from the past in talking about the way we talk about our communities today. So it's both kind of challenging for us, but it also, you know, like tapping into your artist, like you get to create the life that you want. And so there's a lot of power to that. And I think it can be overwhelming too, if you kind of see the bigger vision of where you want to go, and it's like, where do I start? Or there's too much to do, so I'm not even going to take that first step. Right? Yeah,
one of the things that comes from growing up in a very religious society and culture is that thing that religion does, that says that you are on a quest to find God's will for your life. That is your quest, to find God's will for your life. You're also on a quest to find the one person who is your soulmate, because there's only one. And so therefore we search, and we're desperate, and we're anxious, and we're thinking today can't be God's will. Well, guess what? Today is God's will. Whatever today looks like, And I think it's the worst thing not the worst thing. No, we're not going to make that list. But it's one of the worst things that they do to you and it makes you unhappy because you think, well, this can't be God's will. And, just because she didn't tell you today or that it was, it's just a constant search for something better, something different, something new. And today's the day, and I get to be on your podcast.
Yes, I love it. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I have my questions here, and now I gotta jump back in here. Oh yeah. So for those of us who know we have a book in us, but just can't find the time to write, given all of the responsibilities we have running our businesses, help us understand how you have found a balance with the day-to-day responsibilities while also remaining disciplined to write the book.
That's a great question. And because writing is part of everything that I do, it's part of both my journey, my catharsis, my humor, all those things I exhibit when I write. So as I was writing along through the years for an article here, an article there, or even when I wrote my first book on how to sing in a choral setting, I told the publisher, you can publish this, but do not take my humor out. And they only took one thing out, one paragraph that they would not allow in the book, and I'll tell you what it is if you want. I didn't have particularly the goal of writing a book. Mm-hmm. But I wrote memories one at a time as little patchworks. And I thought in the last few years, I will say that I attempted this at the age of 50. I thought, I'm going to write. I went to a hypnotherapist to try and unblock some of the crap that I'd been through, and he couldn't. But I tried anyway. I was woefully unsuccessful. So the seed was planted a little bit. But then here I am, 69, almost 70, and I think it was time. But for most of us who are busy, and our Zoom lives have taken over, it's a matter of setting aside a time to write about that. It's just pick a time this week and say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes, I'm going to write about Aunt Martha and what she did at Thanksgiving that shocked the whole family. And then think, I want to write about high school graduation. So I really started making a table of contents before I ever wrote a chapter, really, because I knew what the parts that stood out. When I was 50 and I was going to launch my national speaking career, which also went nowhere, I paid a coach a lot of money to help me craft my speaking engagements. And she said, okay, the first thing I'm going to give you like 3 weeks to do this. And I want you to write 1 through 50, meaning the years that you've been on the planet. And I want you to write one significant event for each of those 50 years. And I'm like, I can't do that. And she was like, well, yes, you can, because you paid all the money, so you may as well. And she said, go sit in a quiet place and just start filling in, at 18, I graduated from high school. And that was big. That was so cool, and blah, blah, blah. And then at 22, I got married. We'll write that in. Oh, I remember when I was 14. That was big. Yeah. And then you start filling in those gaps, and the memories come back. And then I didn't have anything before 3. And 3 I may have made up, of course. But I had something for all 50 years. I recommend this highly because everything started to come into focus of the turns. And she then sat down and said, well, you had a shift here at 18. And it wasn't because you graduated from high school, but it was because you made this decision. And then at 34, you made a big one, and then 50. And the whole thing starts to come into play. And that then, of course, became part of, I pulled that back out of the table of contents so that I didn't forget something that was important. So, yeah, I think entrepreneurs, business owners are good at spreadsheets. Knock yourself out. The spreadsheet of my life is going to be my next book.
That could be that could be your workbook. Want to write a memoir like mine?
Exactly.
go through the years. It's I'm just thinking for myself, and I'm sure for listeners, like, okay, like where are you now? What number are you at? And how many big events per year can you remember, right? When you think of a year, 365 days, there's at least one thing.
You have to pick one. You have to pick
There's
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's interesting also what when you do that, what you leave out. You leave out stuff that just wasn't important, that you made really important, but when you have to pick one, not so much.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. Like, as I think about that, like in this year, out of everything that's happened, you have to write about one thing, and so it becomes harder, I think, when you get closer to the age that you are and more challenge. Well, it's hard all around, you either have to like prioritize or you have to really dig deep to try to remember what was 3 like,
I recommend that highly, but I can't pick one. Yes, you have to pick the most significant thing that you can remember from when you were 14, or 27, most of it is not event driven, much like our businesses become event driven in our minds, but it's really that underneath that I was talking about. It's not what you do, it's who you are. This is who you are as an entrepreneur and who you are as a business owner, not what you do. Because guess what? You may lose that business. You may do something different, but who you are is going to transpose over to that next, whatever it is that you do. And if you're, well, you've read the book. After I'd been with my chorus in Dallas for 20 years, and I was in therapy, and I said, I can't leave. It's who I am. And she was like, that is not who you are. It's what you do. I'm like, no, you don't understand me. That's who I am. She's like, no, it's not. And literally every week she would say that, until one day, literally, I said, this is not who I am. This is what I do.
Yeah.
Back other way around. It's just what I do. It doesn't define who I am. And I thought I was going to get out of the choral business at that point. That was great. I was done until the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus came calling. And that was the big kahuna. Couldn't pass that one up.
Well, I want to get on San Francisco, right? Because you are in, as you said, you landed at the mothership or inside the whatever the analogy is there. But when we think about our lived experiences of being a part of the rainbow family, the LGBTQIA plus community, however we describe it, we bring, some of the challenges. You talked about resilience earlier, and we bring some really amazing things from these experiences. And so I'm wondering for you, as a business owner, what's from those lived experiences a rainbow superpower, that's what I call them, that allows you to stand out, that allows you to be your real self and actually attracts the people that you love working with?
Another great question. The chorus, when Trump was elected in 2016, we were looking at our 40th anniversary, and we were going to go to China, and to be the first gay men's chorus to ever go to mainland China. And literally day or two afterwards, our board chair said, why are we spending all this money to go to China when really our LGBTQ brothers and sisters in the South need us? And so we pivoted from Beijing to Birmingham, and we took 300 singers on buses to Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and did 25 appearances. So it was life-changing for all of us. We took over the Edmund Pettus Bridge and did a big gay march. And there's a documentary, and everybody should look for it. It may be on Netflix in November. It's called Gay Chorus Deep South, and you can look it up. It had its world premiere at Tribeca, where it won Audience Favorite Award. It went on to win 35 Audience Favorite Awards.
Wow!
And
congratulations!
Number 17 in the list for an Oscar.
Whoa.
It was huge. Yeah. But in one of the scenes, I'm sitting in a pastor's office in the South, and we are asking, it was a Presbyterian church, if we could give a concert there at noon on our tour. This is on our pre-tour. And he said, well, I don't know. This just kind of smacks of activism. And I said, well, we're really just going to sing, and how people interpret that. He goes, well, we're very tolerant. And I said, look, I'm not interested in you tolerating me. I'm not even interested in you accepting me. What I want you to do is celebrate me. And in the documentary, it's one of the best moments.
Yeah.
He sits there for a long time and he goes, well, I just haven't had the nudge to do that. Oh, yes. It's a moment of brilliant filmmaking.
Wow.
I just haven't had the nudge to celebrate you. Like, we're not singing at your church, Joe. I found that having conducted a gay men's chorus in the buckle of the Bible Belt in Dallas, Texas, it was a constant struggle. It was a constant fear. It was a constant, they're not going to accept us. And then what did I do? I came to San Francisco, where everybody's gay. Or ish, and they don't just celebrate the gays. I mean, we're like a protected class of citizen. It's crazy. So when that was taken away, he says, in air quotes, people, and all of a sudden you're not fighting perceptions or fighting to say we're gay but we're good enough. What a switch. What a change for me. Huge change. It's been an incredible 10 years, and I think your entrepreneur folks would love to know that a year and a half ago we bought a 4-story building in San Francisco, which is like, you did what? You say what? And we did, and it was just phenomenal. And it's a 1928 4-story Art Deco building. It is a jewel that it's a fixer-upper. So we bought it a year ago, January, and in this January, we've changed the name, by the way, of the organization. It's the National Queer Arts Center now. We launched it in January with Sharon Stone in attendance and our mayor in attendance, and big deal in January, launching the National Queer Arts Center, which then was shut down in March. Yeah, so we have a boarded up Art Deco building now. Yeah. So for those of you out there wondering, we also did not have our permanent bank loan. This is fascinating for your listeners. So in January, when we launched the Queer Arts Center, we were in the throes of getting a bank loan for this multi-million-dollar building. Jewel, he says. Of course, the bank, when COVID hit, said, all right, you're a performing arts group. How are you going to do this when you're not performing? And we have the chorus budget has gone from when I got here at $600,000 a year to $7.8 million a year. Wow. So it has blossomed, and that includes the building and the other things that we've been able to do. So the bank said, you'll need to put 2 years of mortgage payments in escrow for us to give you this loan, and we swallowed hard, and luckily we were able to do that because people had already begun supporting the building and the capital campaign, and they absolutely said, why? It does us no good for you to keep our money for the capital campaign for renovations if you don't survive COVID. Yeah. So please use that money as needed. So we're going to survive. We're online. I mean, we have a lot of online content, and you can go to the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus website and see all of that. But COVID has done us a deal because, as you all know, singing is the forbidden fruit of COVID. I mean, oh my gosh, who would have thought that the activities that we do, that choirs are the worst people on the planet for aerosolization. We apparently spit all over each other, which we do. That from a business standpoint is quite interesting. We have our fall concert right at this time frame. It will be done by the time this podcast comes out, but we're not charging for this, and it's 70 minutes of high power world premieres, virtual choirs. Then we're doing another one for the holidays, and we are going to charge. So the interesting thing is we've just done a survey of our patrons and fans, and it came back. Of course, we're willing to pay for online content, not on a regular basis. But, when it comes around and it's your holiday concert and it's the cash cow for your whole year, people are willing to pay something for online contact. That was concerts. So that was a relief to us. But ticket sales are a little more than a tenth of that benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the time and I was like, I'm just enjoying this conversation so much. And I'm like, we're up at the hour. If there's anything that we can do to promote, the holiday concerts coming up, we'll share that in the show notes.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But Tim, before we go, like, where is like the one place you would love for our audience to learn more about what you're doing, learn about your book, all the great things that are coming up for you?
To learn more about me and what I'm doing, there are two choices. I know you said one. To learn more about me and what I'm doing in the book, it's timseelig.com. And that's TIMSEELIG. timseelig.com. To learn more about the chorus and its history and its amazing work, that is sfgmc.org, San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, SFGMC. And it is still leading the way. It is still we are still setting real adventuresome programming and trying to continue to be a role model for the hundreds of LGBTQ choruses around the world. And there are great ones in every city, and kind of because we're the granddaddy, we have a responsibility.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time and the stories that you were able to share. You're truly an inspiration. And I know that for many of our listeners, you shared so much that resonates with our experiences. So that's always refreshing when we're like, we can find other people that have endured some of the challenges that we have ourselves. And I know that's not always easy to share. So thank you for trusting the process. And for everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Tim. So if you're enjoying the show, be sure to check out every new episode Tuesday mornings. And the best way to do that is if you subscribe wherever you consume the podcasts. Until the next time we connect, please keep showing up as authentically as you want in your work and in your life. And we'll connect soon. All right, take care.